Yasa Scherete. My name is, well, I've changed my channel name. So, welcome to the Roman Orthodox channel. I'm, as perhaps some of you know, if you've watched any of my prior videos, I'm a former traditionalist Roman Catholic who became Eastern Orthodox. And in that journey, I think I've had some experiences that might be helpful to some other people, especially those who are searching uh, in because of crises in the Roman Catholic Church today for something more, for something like Eastern Orthodoxy. And I wanted to create this channel to share my struggles, to share my thoughts about that process, and to help those who are thinking about it to see what the road ahead might look like. This is just my testimonial. This is by no means an Orthodox apologetics channel or a debate channel or anything like that. This is just me sharing my story with all of you. So part of that story, which I'm going to be addressing in today's video, is the frustration that I experienced when I was trying to convert from traditionalist Roman Catholicism. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's a group of Catholics that are devoted to the traditional Latin Mass and to Catholicism as it existed before the Second Vatican Council. In a nutshell, now there are, obviously some shades of interpretation right there, but that's a pretty good way of explaining what traditionalist Roman Catholicism is. And I experienced not a few frustrations, just quite a few frustrations, in fact, in the process of converting from traditionalist Roman Catholicism to the Orthodox Church. And I just want to share those with you today. So number one, and this is kind of an umbrella term, but a lot of Orthodox people, when a visitor comes to their church and they're trying to sort of explain or answer questions, a lot of them sort of assume that the other person is Protestant. And even if they tell them that, oh, I'm Catholic, they sort of approach it as if they were Protestant. So the number one sort of frustration that I had in converting was getting away from sort of being assumed that I held Protestant beliefs or Protestant ideas about the church. And let me just sort of explain there. For example, when a person visits an Orthodox church, a lot of times they get sort of mobbed by people trying to explain to them about icons or about the veneration of the saints or about liturgy or about the bread and wine becoming the body and blood of our Lord, the Theotokos, all of these things. And a lot of those issues are just not really big issues for Catholics. Now, it's true, when we get in the nitty gritty of the theology, there might be some aspects of those things that need some fine tuning between Eastern Orthodoxy and Catholicism. But it actually gets really hard to get resources to explain those fine tuning details. And by the way, not all Orthodox agree that there are, finer points of difference between Orthodoxy and Catholicism. Some Orthodox scholars, especially those who are trained in higher academia, they'll tend to underemphasize those differences and say, they're not that different, or maybe they're not different at all in terms of, real substance. And then they'll have other more strident Orthodox believers who say, oh, these differences are huge and we can't ignore, how Catholicism has gone wrong because of X, Y, Z. And let's point out all the, nitty gritty theological disputes between Catholics and Orthodox, even if some of those aren't really disputed anymore. Let's try to point out all these huge differences. You have these two sides of the spectrum, but in any case, it's actually really hard to find that kind of material because, well, you walk into an Orthodox church and you're going to have a lot of books by, I'm not, calling her out as, her tools are very helpful. But a lot of books by Frederica Matthews Green, a lot of books by apologists, Father Josiah Trenum, all of these people who have really great resources for Protestants who are becoming Orthodox, but not really the kind of in-depth information for Catholics who are becoming Orthodox. Now, that being said, I do want to give you one really good resource. And it was recommended to me when I was converting and when I was a catechumen. I've since recommended it to other Catholics who are thinking about becoming Orthodox, and that is Thinking Orthodox by Presbytera Constantino. Just a fantastic, absolutely fantastic book that deals with the Orthodox mindset, which I think honestly is going to do you a lot more good coming from a Catholic background than pretty much any apologetics work that you might find. It's better to just sort of dig in and try to understand about the Orthodox Church and try to understand how that is different from your experience in the Catholic Church. So that's my 2 cents on that. That's a really good resource, and I'm sure there are others out there. But it can be really hard to find them because you're sort of overrun with materials directed to Protestants. And it actually can be kind of discouraging because, you get this book and it's assigned to you to read for the next 5 weeks in your catechumen class. And you read the first chapter and you're like, oh gosh, here they go trying to defend the veneration of saints. I know why we venerate saints, or why we venerate images of the saints. I know why we do that. Or Catholics believe in the first 7 ecumenical councils. So, that gets kind of frustrating. And it's an opportunity for humility, and it's an opportunity for prayer. And it just means you have to study harder than everybody else in your class, which is good. Always better to do extra work. Okay, I'm going to go to frustration number 2. This is more directed to other, well, a lot of these are going to be directed to other converts, sort of, and the community of converts that you exist in whenever you're converting to Orthodoxy. So just, by way of introduction, you're probably going to have to take a catechumen class or an inquirer class if you're converting into the Orthodox faith. It's not usually a private instruction sort of situation. And in that class, you're going to become close to a lot of other people who are going on this journey with you, many of whom will come from Protestant religions or no religion. So they have a fairly long ways to go to get to Eastern Orthodoxy. And here you're going to be. And they're going to talk about things that they're looking for and why they are searching for the Eastern Orthodox faith. And personally, I think what a lot of them will express to you is that they were looking for certainty, right? They looked for something solid, and they found the Orthodox faith, this ancient, tradition that is really, rooted in apostolic teaching and in the teachings of the fathers. Now, here's where the frustration comes in for a traditionalist Roman Catholic or a Roman Catholic. Catholics also have a theory of certainty, right? The idea that while there might be perhaps some issues that are unsettled, generally speaking, we have, let's put it that we, as in Christians, have a resource to turn to settle those issues of doubt, which is the Pope, right? Which is the magisterium of the church. And this sort of weeds out inconsistent traditions, inconsistent patristic teachings, or explains ambiguities in scriptural text, right? Catholicism is very much a closed system in many ways. It has a way of deducing the truth, or at least it claims to have that. whether modern Catholicism sort of has that same view of itself is a bit of a open question, depending on whether you're a conservative or a liberal or what have you. But for traditionalists, generally speaking, they believe that theology is this science, and a perfect science at that, where you can obtain certainty. So you could see the temptation when you're faced with other converts who are saying, I'm looking for certainty and I found orthodoxy. And you're thinking, well, no, orthodoxy compared to what I came from is a huge mess, right? I got one patriarch over here saying one thing and one patriarch over here saying a different thing. And one priest says, you need to be sure to fast on these days. And one priest says something different. It can be a really tempting and frustrating thing to be talking to these people and them to say, I found something that's certain. And you're like, finally, I found something that doesn't claim that every mystery has been solved, right? And this is a very sort of cognitive dissonance this is very much cognitive dissonance for a Catholic convert. You're talking with people who are rejoicing that they found certainty, while you yourself are giving up this rationalistic sense of certainty. And here, this is just an aside. Many of those who are claiming that, I found certainty in the Orthodox faith, many of those people, unfortunately, are thinking that Orthodoxy works like Catholicism. They're frankly, they think that it's just a rational system where they can work out all the exact correct answers by reading the canons and the church fathers. But of course, any, I think, serious Orthodox teacher will tell you it's not that simple. That is not orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is fundamentally an experience of God, or at least that's how I came to know it. And so, as a Catholic who is becoming Orthodox, at least I find that this cognitive dissonance can be a source of temptation, a source of vexation on my part, and it can be difficult to manage especially without having a spiritual father that understands that difficulty. And they are out there, so you can find a spiritual father to help you navigate through those problems. Anyway, moving on to number 3, a lot of apologists for Orthodox teaching, they have a tendency to downplay the veneration of Mary and the saints in the Orthodox Church. They'll say something like, you ask your friends to pray for you, don't you? Well, this is just the same thing, and they're still alive in heaven, so we can still ask for their prayers, and they can come and answer those prayers for us. But that is really reductive. I think especially cradle Orthodox believers sense that kind of explanation it doesn't reflect at all the level of love that we experience for the saints, or the sort of extravagant devotion that we give to Mary and give to Mary, the Theotokos, and the other saints, especially our patron saints, especially the patron saints of our area or of our culture. One of the great joys of being married to a cradle Orthodox believer is that, she has that love sort of built in her, and she has no sort of qualms about that. But if you start by sort of downplaying what devotion to the saints and to Mary is, it can be, I tend to think like it can create a false narrative in many Protestant converts' minds that somehow Orthodoxy has less devotion to Mary or less devotion to the saints than Catholicism does, which in their mind just goes way overboard. But actually, it's pretty much the same concept. The veneration of Mary and the saints is a veneration of them as reflections of God, and we recognize that they can help us and that they can really assist us with their prayers. Not just sort of like asking your friend, "Hey, would you mind praying for me tonight?" No, it's a knowledge coming from faith that the person you're asking is with God and can help you with your prayers. To sort of illustrate why this might be frustrating to Catholics who are converting, I actually have two prayers today. One is I'm just going to read little excerpts from both of them. One is the canon to the Theotokos, and I'm reading it in translation from the Old Orthodox prayer book. This is the Old Rite prayer book, so the translation may be a little bit different from your translation and your prayer book. So I'm going to read a little bit from this and a little bit from St. Louis. He's not a saint in the Orthodox Church, but from St. Louis de Montfort, a very big Marian saint in the Roman Catholic Church. I'm going to read from his prayer to Mary and then read a little bit from the canon to the Theotokos, and you'll see sort of what I'm talking about. All right, let's actually start with St. Louis de Montfort. So it starts off, Hail Mary, beloved daughter of the eternal Father. Hail Mary, admirable mother of the Son. Hail Mary, faithful spouse of the Holy Ghost. Hail Mary, my dear mother, my loving mistress, my powerful sovereign. Hail my joy, my glory, my heart, and my soul. Thou art all mine by mercy, and I am all thine by justice. But I am not yet sufficiently thine. I now give myself wholly to thee without keeping anything back for myself or others. If thou still seest in me anything which does not belong to thee, I beseech thee to take it and make thyself the absolute mistress of all that is mine. Destroy in me all that may be displeasing to God. Root it up and bring it to naught. Place and cultivate in me everything that is pleasing to thee. May the light of thy faith dispel the darkness of my mind. May thy profound humility take the place of my pride. May thy sublime contemplation check the distractions of my wandering imagination. May thy continuous sight of God fill my memory with his presence. May the burning love of thy heart inflame the lukewarmness of mine. May thy virtues take the place of my sins. May thy merits be my only adornment in the sight of God, and make up for all that is wanting in me. Okay, that probably sounds pretty extreme to any Protestant listeners of this channel or viewers of this channel. But let's have a listen to the canon to the Theotokos. And I'm just going to read the Traparia in the canon, not the refrains in between. By many temptations am I distressed. In search of salvation, unto thee have I taken flight. O Mother of the Word and Virgin, save me from dangers and difficulties. Attacks of the passions disquiet me, and they fill my soul with much sadness. Be still it, O maiden, with the calmness of thy Son and thy God, O all immaculate one. To God and the Savior thou gavest birth. I beg thee, O Virgin, to deliver me from evils. For now unto thee I flee for refuge, bringing to thee both my soul and my thoughts. Vouchsafe divine visitation and thy care unto me who am in affliction and anguish, O thou who alone art God's mother, for thou art good, and the mother of the good. As the protection and defense of my life have I chosen thee, O Virgin Mother of God. Guide me to thy haven, O cause of blessings, and support of the faithful, O thou only all hymned one. I beseech thee, O Virgin, to dispel the disquiet of my soul and the storm of my sadness, for thou, O Bride of God, unique and most pure, gavest birth to Christ, the Prince of Peace. All right. Can you see the difference between those two prayers? Well, probably not. They're pretty similar, at least in sentiment. We could maybe talk about how Montfort and Orthodox theology have different underlying theories of salvation. Maybe that's a topic for a future video if I ever get a blessing to talk about something that deep. But you can see that, like, at least for a Catholic who comes from a Montfortian background or from a Marian background, the prayers of the Orthodox Church are not shocking at all, right? They're actually kind of comforting. The realization that we come into the Orthodox faith and we don't leave behind our love for Mary. In fact, it grows in intensity and is focused on truly believing, both in image and in reality, that the Theotokos can pray for us and can be a source of salvation for us. So anyway, I say all of that to say that it can be very frustrating to hear this sort of downplaying of veneration of Mary and the saints. And if you experience that, the only advice I can give you is to, go to a shrine, to one of the saints. You're probably going to be surrounded by a lot of cradle Orthodox, probably not as many converts as you would think, but go to a shrine or some kind of pilgrimage center to a saint, and you'll find the spirituality that is authentic Orthodoxy. And don't get frustrated by this tendency to downplay our veneration of our holy saints and of the Holy Theotokos. Okay, number 4, Orthodox who play act as Catholics. Oh my goodness, this crushed me. When I was becoming Orthodox, I found that there were a fair number of Orthodox believers, particularly around the Western Rite, but it's not exclusive to the Western Rite. But they find various useful things in Roman Catholicism that maybe they have a little more cultural familiarity with, just because the Catholic Church is everywhere in America and the Orthodox Church is not. And they decide they're going to kind of play act as Catholics. And the reason I found that frustrating, first of all, they tend to do it wrong. So a lot of times they just engage in these practices without actually understanding what the Catholic Church is attempting to accomplish or is doing when it engages in similar practices. Another thing with the Western Rite that I don't have any problem with people who attend the Western Rite, but it was actually very painful for me to attend a Western Rite liturgy. And I'm the very type of person that the Western Rite liturgy is targeted to, because a lot of times people make assumptions about the Western liturgy that come from, for example, the Book of Common Prayer, which is a huge perversion of the Western liturgical heritage. It actually has, it's something that was done to make the Western liturgy more Protestant, not to make it more to Orthodox. Don't believe that line. But people are coming at it from the Book of Common Prayer or from Protestantism, and they think that, that the Western liturgy works a certain way when it actually doesn't. And this is just from lack of experience on their part, and it can be really frustrating. And it's a very strong temptation to be judgmental or to be impatient or to be hubristic. This is a huge, frustration that I experienced when I was converting. I don't know that I have any real solutions for this, although except to say that it helped me just to make a clean break and just to adopt as much of the Eastern liturgy, the Eastern Rite, the Eastern prayers as I could, and then discover along the way that certain things were helpful with the help of my spiritual father. It's some of those things were helpful. So I don't really have a solution for you, except to say, well, this was something that frustrated me in my journey. Okay. Last but not least, I think there is this myth of the Western man. And I found this really frustrating as a Catholic to Orthodox convert. The idea of the Western man as being someone who is, per se more logical or more linear in thinking or more or tied to certain ideas and classical liberalism or democracy, or however you want to define what the Western man is, or the Western culture. One thing that we can say with a fair degree of certainty is that most Protestants who come into the Orthodox faith, they don't actually have any background in Western Christianity. They're evangelicals. Sure, there are some crossovers between Catholicism and Protestantism, but I think the tendency of many Orthodox converts to sort of lump Protestants and Catholics into a Western mindset is very flawed, because it ignores the contemplative tradition of Catholicism. It ignores the mystical side of the Western of the Western saints, especially. It's not all legalism and rationality. That's simply not true as far as what makes up Western Christianity. And to the extent that there is a Western culture, it's a non-Catholic Western culture, largely derived from the hyper rationalist Protestant Reformation, not really from Catholicism or from anything really ancient, beyond the Protestant Reformation, and beyond the Enlightenment. Certainly, the Enlightenment has a huge impact there. By the way, if they try to tell you that the Enlightenment happened in the West and not the East, that is absolute nonsense. It only takes a little bit of study, especially into the Greek Revolution, the court of Catherine the Great, the salons in St. Petersburg and all of that sort of thing. You will find that the Enlightenment was absolutely everywhere. Maybe in Asia, there was a little bit less of it, but it affected literally everyone. There was a time when the Russian court spoke French, not Russian. There is a time when the theological seminary in Kiev primarily taught in Latin. There is not this sort of stark divide between East and West. And one of the frustrating things about converting to Orthodoxy from Catholicism is that oftentimes certain aspects of Western culture, and likewise certain aspects of Eastern culture, are sort of ignored, and they make it more difficult, I think, for one to see, okay, what do I keep? What do I get rid of? What should I study? What should I not study? Who should I read? Who should I not read? It can make it a little bit frustrating and a little bit difficult, especially when the idea of Westernism is an ideology that many traditionalist Roman Catholics adhere to. This idea of sort of we need to preserve the purity of Western culture. Well, look, if you're becoming Eastern Orthodox, that project is not yours. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Okay, if you found anything frustrating about converting to Orthodoxy, let me know in the comments. And I'd be interested to hear all of your thoughts on what I've shared today. And I wish you all a very good, very good evening. Kalispera.